Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and the members of the press, you are welcome to the communique and press briefing for the 148th Monetary Policy Committee meeting that took place today and today, the 24th of May 2023. The Monetary Policy Committee met on the 23rd and on the 24th of May 2023, confronted with persisting and emerging risks to both the global and domestic economies. On the global scene, the key risks are the fear of contagion arising from the US banking crisis, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and growing tensions between China and the United States. In addition to this, the oil market has remained volatile even as global trade figures continue to decline. In the domestic economy, the major risks identified include high public debt, high inflation, declining oil production, and moderate recovery of output growth. The committee assessed these developments and the outlook for the rest of the year. 11 members of the committee attended this meeting. The global economic development. The committee deliberated on the key headwinds confronting the recovery of global growth, including the impact on global trade associated with the Russia-Ukraine war, the risk of contagion from the United States banking crisis as investors exercise caution, and the downside risk from the build-up of hostilities between the US and China. Output growth recovery has thus remained moderate in some countries and subdued in others. Members noted that despite concerted efforts by the advanced economy, central banks, inflation has remained broadly elevated and well above long-run objectives, with consequences for investment spending and the recovery of output growth. In the emerging markets and developing economies, inflationary pressures remain heightened amidst several headwinds. Global financial conditions have continued to tighten as several central banks maintain their push towards taming inflation. Gold prices sustain an uptrend as investors seek a safer haven asset to shield their losses in the event of a broader market downturn, with growing fears of a global financial contagion associated with the banking crisis in the US and in Europe. Consequently, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) in its April 2023 World Economic Outlook further downgraded output growth forecast for 2023 to 2.8% compared with its January forecast of 2.9%. Growth is however expected to improve moderately to 3% in 2024. Domestic economic development. According to the Bureau of Statistics (NBS), real gross domestic product grew by 2.31% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2023 compared with 3.11% in the corresponding period of 2022 and 3.52% in the preceding quarter. The economy moderated on its current recovery trajectory, posting positive albeit lower growth for the 10th consecutive quarter, in spite of a multitude of headwinds to its full recovery. The growth performance was driven largely by the sustained growth in the services and agricultural sectors, progressive uptrend in economic activities across several subsectors, and sustenance of broad-based support by the bank in growth-enhancing sectors. Staff projections show that output growth recovery is expected to continue reasonably in 2023, given the significant improvement in the composite purchasing managers index, which rose to 51.1 index points in April 2023 from 42.6 index points in March 2022. Let's have a sense of this. The committee noted the persistent uptick in inflation as headline inflation year-on-year rose to 22.2% in April 2023 from 22.04% during the previous month. While this amounted to a moderate increase of 0.18% points, the recent uptick was driven largely by the increase in both the food and core components, which rose moderately to 24.6 and 20.14% in April 2023, from 24.45 and 19.86% respectively. In March 2023, the lingering insecurity in major food producing areas, high cost of transportation driven by rising energy costs, activities of middlemen in the food distribution channels, as well as the persistence of shocks from legacy infrastructure bottlenecks. The MPC observed that the economy continued to be weighed down by high import bills, leading to pressure on foreign exchange and resultant increase in the general price level. The committee noted that the economy needs to build up the stock of foreign reserves so as buffer against shocks. In addition, the current trend in price development will continue to be monitored by the bank with greater collaboration with the fiscal authority to address the drivers of inflation. Broad money supply M3 in April 2023 grew by 32.11% annualized, largely driven by the increase in net domestic assets. Money market rates reflected the relatively tight liquidity conditions in the banking system. Consequently, the monthly weighted average open buyback (OBB) and interbank call rates increased to 17.05 and 15.8% in April 2023, from 14.07 and 14.75% in March 2023, respectively. The committee noted the sustained stability in the banking system, evidenced by the performance of the financial soundness indicators. The capital adequacy ratio stood at 12.8%, non-performing loans at 4.4%, and liquidity ratio at 45.3% as of April 2023. MPC noted the momentary lull in the equities market in the review period, following end-of-year activities by several companies on the exchange. The all-share index and market capitalization declined to 52,403.51 and 28.53 trillion naira on April 28, 2023, from 55,806.26 and 30.40 trillion naira on February 28, respectively. The committee also noted the moderate decline in the level of gross external reserves to $34.91 billion in April 2023 from $35.14 billion as at the end of March 2023, attributable to transactions in the foreign exchange market and the largely minuscule accretion to reserves from crude oil exports. The bank disbursed the sum of 25.6 billion under the 1 trillion naira real sector support facility to 8 new real sector projects in manufacturing, packaging, pharmaceuticals, plastic and cosmetic products. Cumulative disbursements under the real sector support facility currently stands at 2.56 trillion naira, disbursed to 462 projects across the country, comprising 258 manufacturing, 95 agriculture, 97 services, and 13 mining sector projects. Whereas under the 100 for 100 policy on production and productivity, the bank disbursed the sum of 13.81 billion to 3 projects in the manufacturing sector. This brings the cumulative disbursement under the facility to 173.3 billion naira, disbursed to 81 projects comprising 45 manufacturing, 23 agriculture, 5 healthcare, and 8 services sector projects with an estimated 23,343 direct jobs created. Under the Nigerian Electricity Market Stabilization Facility, NEMS 2, for capital and operational expenditure of distribution company DISCOs, the bank disbursed 11.82 billion naira to ease liquidity constraints and support the recovery of legacy debt. Under the scheme so far, the bank has disbursed a cumulative sum of 254.39 billion naira. The outlook. The broad outlook for the full recovery of both the global and domestic economies remain clouded by legacy and emerging risks. Available data and forecasts for key macroeconomic indicators in the Nigerian economy suggest that the economy will continue a moderate recovery path through 2023 as legacy headwinds linger. These include insecurity in food producing areas, high cost of energy, and rising cost of debt servicing. Accordingly, the economy is forecast to grow in 2023 by 3.03% CBN estimate, 3.75% Federal Government of Nigeria estimate, and 2.29% by the IMF estimate. The committee's consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, at this meeting, the MPC was concerned that despite the aggressive stance adopted since its May 2022 meeting, inflation had decelerated towards the bank's long-run objective. The MPC noted that the continued rise in headline inflation, albeit moderately, remained the biggest challenge confronting macroeconomic stability in Nigeria. Headline inflation, in the view of members, remained high, due largely to a host of non-monetary factors outside the reach of the central bank, such as perennial scarcity of PMS and expectations of short-term hikes in food supply chain. In the circumstance, committee need be to improve its ability to respond to legacy and emerging shocks. Non-oil revenue sources such as the expansion of the tax bracket will enable the reduction of fiscal deficits and public debt to improve fiscal space. Confronted by these challenges, the committee tasked its research and monetary policy department in the course of this meeting to evaluate the counterfactual evidence from available data using empirical analysis. The results of the analysis revealed that following each monetary policy rate hike, the rise in inflation moderated relatively to what it could have been if MPC did not aggressively raise rates at all. In fact, empirical evidence provided showed that whereas inflation in April 2023 stood at 22.27%, the counterfactual evidence suggests that it could have risen to 30.48% in April 2023 had the MPC not taken any action to raise policy rates as it did since May last year. Indeed, the cumulative effect of monetary policies, MPC's policy rate hikes, has moderated the rise in inflation by about 800 basis points over the last 1 year. Committee was also concerned that output growth on a year-on-year basis dropped to 2.31% during the first quarter of 2023, compared with 3.11% during the first quarter of 2022. The dilemma at this meeting, therefore, centered around whether to hold or loosen in order to refocus on growth or tighten further in order to tame the rise in inflation. Members were, however, unanimous that given that rising inflation would ultimately halt growth, it is imperative to continue to focus on price and monetary stability, though in a less aggressive manner. The committee called on the management of the bank to continue to explore avenues to improve the exchange rate policy to moderate pressure on the market. Members were optimistic that the continued progress made with the RT200, Naira for dollar, and other policies targeted at attracting trade and diaspora remittances would continue to support accretion to reserves and improve liquidity in the foreign exchange market. While output growth remains on a positive trajectory, the MPC noted the need for increased monetary and fiscal coordination to support recovery in the light of the identified risks confronting the domestic economy. Members expressed satisfaction with the banking and financial system stability indicators presented to the committee. They, however, noted that the risk of global financial contagion is yet to dissipate. To this end, management was enjoined to maintain strict vigilance to insulate the banking system from potential spillover effects. So far, the bank has sustained stringent micro and macro prudential measures to ensure that the banking system remained resilient with adequate buffers to ward off both external and domestic shocks. In its consideration as to whether to hold, loosen, or tighten, the MPC was of the view that hold or loosen options were not desirable at this time, given that a hold may compromise the bank's decision to tame the rising inflation, particularly when its in-house staff estimates have projected that headline inflation will continue to rise in the immediate months ahead before decelerating. As to whether to loosen, this option was considered undesirable because loosening in the face of persistently rising headline inflation would compound the inflationary pressure and trigger further macroeconomic instability. The committee also feels that loosening would further widen the negative real effective interest rate margin and worsen domestic financial and monetary market conditions, including triggering a naira depreciation. The committee's decision. In the opinion of members, the key policy dilemma at this meeting was either to hold or hike the policy rate marginally to offset the moderate increase in headline inflation. Considering the option of a hold policy, the committee reiterated the empirical counterfactual evidence of a do-nothing and believe that the rate hikes have indeed helped moderate the continued rise in inflation, albeit month on month. In addition, the evidence revealed that the rate hike has also helped moderate growth in new credit and reduce the pent-up aggregate demand, which had contributed to the inflationary pressures. Members were unanimous in their conclusion that the current policy stance is indeed impacting the targeted parameters and yielding the expected outcome, albeit at somewhat slowly. Reviewing the arguments to further hike the policy rate in a bid to subdue aggregate demand, members noted that the current uptrend in inflationary pressure was driven by a combination of both demand and supply side issues. The MPC observed the continued upward risk to price development driven primarily by expectations of rising energy and food prices, unabating security challenges in food producing areas, as well as persistent exchange rate pressure. The committee thus felt it expedient to continue to address the demand side issues falling within the ambit of its policy tools. The balance of the argument thus leans sufficiently in favor of a further hike, albeit less aggressively, considering the adverse impact of rising inflation on real income. The MPC therefore opted to tighten, though moderately, to 1. Indicate the MPC's conviction that the current policy stance is moderating the rising inflation, albeit month by month, and sustain the stance will consolidate the gains made so far. 2. Support the efforts towards moderating the demand pull inflation as cost of funds increases and discourages further build-up in aggressive demand in the face of declining output growth. 3. Narrow the negative real effective interest rate gap and moderate the associated consequences, including discouraging domestic savings mobilization and winning investor confidence. And 4. Effectively moderate the monetary phenomenon in the current drivers of inflation by tempering both economic and financial conditions and sweep up the inflationary excess liquidity in the system. And 5. Boost the bank and the committee's credibility, following its earlier forward guidance to continue to tighten when confronted with unabated rising inflation. Members thus resolved by unanimous vote to raise the MPR, but moderately. 10 members voted to raise the MPR by 50 basis points and 1 member by 25 basis points. All members voted to keep all parameters constant. In summary, the MPC voted 1. Raise the MPR to 18.5%, 2. Retain the asymmetric corridor of plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the MPR, and 3. Retain the CRR at 2.5%, and 4, retain the equity ratio at 30%. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Governor. That was communique number 148, read by the Governor. We want to take some questions now. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Governor. My name is James of this day. Since May 2022, the NBC has adopted a contractionary policy stance. And we know that the NBS released the inflation statistic, putting it at 22.2% for April. So how would the NBS convince Nigerians that the continued hike in NPR will help to curb inflation, given the rising prices of goods and commodities? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Sunday Michael Ogu, a Daily Trust newspaper. Mr. Governor, you talked about a number of things, and I would like you to, in the face of what's happening in the US and Europe, address how this continuous rise in interest rate will not have any impact on our banking system, especially if you look at what's happening, like I said, in Europe, how this decelerating growth, as we have seen in Nigeria, will not be impacted by this continuous cycle. And my second question would we continue to target the rise in inflation? If we come back for the next meeting and there is an increase, at what point, will we be able to say, here we are comfortable with the number of rises we have seen, so that we don't begin to see a negative impact on the economy with the continuous rises in interest rate? Thank you.
Hold on, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Governor and members of the NBC. I'm Nancy Naju. I'm from Moneyline Nigeria. Mr. Governor, taking into account your recent statement about the gradual departure from quasi-fiscal responsibilities, with what you just reeled out here concerning inflation, is the CBN looking at perhaps re-evaluating your stance on that, given the rise in core inflation, which is all items less farm produce? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Governor. My name is Biodun Dari from Radio Nigeria. Given the role played by the CBN in the realization of the Dangote refinery, I would like to find out what is the expectation of the CBN in terms of foreign reserve now that the refinery has been built.
Thank you. We have 2 questions from Lagos. Number 1, Bukola Idowu of Leadership Newspaper Lagos sent in this question. Mr. Governor, sir, only last week you launched the Sabi Money Financial Literacy Portal, and you predicted that the bank's ambitious goal of achieving a 95% financial inclusion rate by next year. How attainable is this? The last question from Collins Nweze of the Nation newspaper. Governor, given your several efforts to boost foreign FX flow and improve foreign exchangeability in the market through out 200 naira for dollar, diaspora remittances, etc., how much compliment are you getting from the oil revenue inflow side, given that it still remains the sector with the highest immediate potential for foreign exchange inflow from oil export? Thank you.
Thank you very much for all your questions. I think the first question centered from James Emejo centered primarily on the fact that we're seeing that since last year we've been increasing rates, and that in fact in the month of April we've seen that inflation is still going up. And you are asking, if we are increasing rates which is effectively to dampen inflation or rein in inflation. And the inflation rate is still going up. How can we convince Nigerians that our decisions are potent? Or our actions are potent and that it's actually doing anything? I would say, yes, indeed, our actions are potent. Our actions are potent because we believe that today, the inflationary pressure that we see confronting us is a global phenomenon. And this started since 2022. In economies like the advanced economies, today we're talking about US and Europe, you can easily say that ceteris paribus, that there is a direct relationship that once you raise rates, in this case, inflation continues to come down. Yes, it is true that in the US, they raise rates, they're still raising rates, although they're becoming moderate now. They raise rates, but inflation is coming down. But the rate of that deceleration in inflation, even till today, is still above their own long-run objectives. The same with Europe. So it would seem that yes, that their own lag period is shorter, but for Nigeria, where there are so many other factors that are impacting our decisions and blunt the efficacy of our policy, you'll find that the lag is a little bit longer. That is essentially what is happening. The MPC deliberated extensively on this yesterday because we were concerned that it is important for us to think of how can we convince Nigerians that since May last year, we have been raising rates somewhat aggressively, but yet inflation continues to go up. We wanted to convince ourselves, so we tasked our research department and the monetary policy department to go in and look at various models to come up with what is the level of potency of the decision that we have taken. There are various models, there are various macroeconomic models that you can use, but the guys came back, they used what is called the Favor X model. And when they came up with that model, and that's why we decided to show you some charts on here, and you may just focus on those charts. And we are going to put those charts on our website, so those who may want to review them and read more about it can know what we're saying. Because we feel that we owe Nigerians the explanation that, look, we have been aggressively raising rates. Why is it that inflation is not coming down? But we said in the last 2-3 meetings that we will see that it is the rate of deceleration is coming down gradually. Because if you look at the drop in the rate of inflation month on month, you'll find out that we are seeing some results. But again, we felt that since last year, when they started moving on very aggressively, that it is still rising in absolute numbers is an issue that we need to contend with. And we thought that, look, let's look at it again. From the chart you see there, you will see that from the month of September, because I want to take September, but the next chart will show it very clearly. In the month of September, we did raise policy rate to 15.5%. And you could see from the red line that the actual inflation was 20.7%. But if we did not do anything, the inflation could have been 21.86. Now you go further. Let's go to the next meeting. The next meeting was in November. But of course, you would imagine that between the September meeting and October, we saw more of the impact of that decision. In the month of November, we moved NPR to 16.5%. And what NBS reported as the actual inflation rate was 21.47. If we did not take the action that we took at that previous one, perhaps inflation would have been, not perhaps, our models show that inflation would have been at 24.18%. And on, went into January, we saw it shows more potency in the decisions we took. But we're very concerned for this meeting, and that was why we said, look, with NBS coming and telling us that April was 22.2. You could see that we said the analysis showed that our own macroeconomic computation showed that it would have been 30.48%. And that would have, you would have seen, if we didn't do anything, you would have seen the steep rise in inflation from just about 17.71% in May 2022, would have been about 30.48% today. But because of the action that we have taken, by being aggressive in rate hikes, we are at 22.2% today. This gives us the assurance, yes, there is a long lag effect, but you will find that ultimately we begin to see it come down in absolute terms. We are even our own in-house estimates that in the next foreseeable months, you will see the next chart. If you go to the next chart, if you can see, you will also see the tables that shows that explains this. So what are we saying? We are convinced that it is working. And one of the questions that was asked is that was by if I can remember his name, Alan Nancy who was saying, would we continue to raise rates as long as inflation, the trend continues to go up? And I've said so, I'm not going to give anybody any assurance that we're not going to do what we're doing, because we're seeing the result of what we're doing. We're also seeing its impact on the impact of NPR rise on the headline inflation. Yeah, this is the one I was also thinking that this one talks about credit. Because we have hiked rates, we increase rates aggressively. You will see that we will see some upward and downward pressures on credit, but at least we will see ultimately that the level of credit has dropped. It could have NPR of 18%, credit had dropped to about 600. But at some point, if you look at it around March or April, around May 2022, credit was about 1.4 trillion, right? Then as we speak today, credit is about 600, slightly above 600 billion. So which means that the ultimate objective, which is to say, when you raise rates, you are trying to constrain credit. We will say, yes, we are seeing it happen. And I must confess here that we are not happy that these rates, the right hike in rates is constraining credit. But we have to do our work because inflation is at the heart of what we are saying we want to deal with at this time. Because if you don't raise rates in order to constrain credit, what that will mean is that it will create more inflationary pressures and create more problems for us. And also goes to address the issue, one of the questions that was raised about growth. It has impact on growth, no doubt. But we still feel that at 22.22%, growth is being impacted. And that we're not saying that we are removing our eyes from growth. We're not saying that, one of the questions talked about whether we're going to be now, and Nancy was saying, what he says, we had announced before that there's going to be a gradual exit from coastal fiscal function. What we said is that there will be a reduction in the level of aggression in our coastal fiscal. We're not just going to go from say, on a scale of 0 to 10, from 10 to 0, because you could see that even in the course of this communique, I did read some of the interventions that were granted in billions of naira to some very, very priority sectors of the economy, that it will not be as aggressive as we have been, because at this time, inflation is what, taming inflation through raising rates is what is at the heart of what we are addressing at our meeting. And it is a global phenomenon. In fact, your monetary policy decisions will be seen to be not in line or not in tandem with macroeconomic policy decision-making process. If at a time when you are seeing an aggressive rise in inflation rate, what you are doing is an easy $6.5 billion during those same periods, out of which even we as central bank were able to grant about 125 billion naira, 10 years, 2 years at single-digit interest rate. They know how in my entire banking career I've ever seen that. So, and I am not being going to assure anybody that this trend will continue, particularly at this time when we're in a territory of high interest rate regime. It's not possible. So you will see that
the kind of benefit we are even seeing today with what we call a somewhat moderated growth is even the result of some of the interventions that we have done in the past. We are not entirely going out, but we are not going to be aggressive, because by remaining aggressive in that direction, certainly what it does again further is that it blunts the efficacy of our policy in this direction of trying to rein in inflation. So it's a balancing act, and we just pray and hope that people understand where we are coming from. We thought to do this because it's very important, so that those who think they understand macroeconomics, go to our website, you will see there. If you want to see the formula, for full disclosure, you will see the formula, and then go and titrate the numbers. We know whether you agree with us or not. But we are saying we are convinced that the decisions we have taken are potent enough, and that we need to continue to take those decisions so we can achieve the desired objectives. I saw a question, if I can just jump. It said, given the role played by the CBN in making the Dangote refinery project a dream come true, what would be the expectation of monetary authorities as the pressure on countries foreigners? You know that, like I said, the presidential commission on Monday, for us, it was history that was made on Monday through the commission of that Dangote refinery. It is the biggest single train refinery in the world today. And Dangote himself has committed that by the end of July, very early August, that we will see petrol, we will see, and they will dispense petrol from that refinery. For us, that is a big game changer for Nigeria, because we will no longer be importing. Like I said, import bills constitute almost close to about $25 billion annually. You may contest the number, but let's not forget that some of those things are also going across the borders. But eventually, by the time that refinery comes on stream, begins to bring out its PMS, its diesel and other products and the rest of them. Somebody asked me, TVC was asking me a question, does it mean the price of oil will come down? I said, come down. It cannot come down because it will still be at market rate. However, the price at which to be dispensed when it comes out will be lower than the price it would have been dispensed if we spent dollar to import the dollar from abroad. One, because it is local, so no transportation cost. Two, no storage, all those logistical expenses. So we see that we'll be lucky to see that maybe close about 20% savings if you were for doing it, for refining locally, rather than compared to if you were importing from abroad. So those are the, but the important thing here is this: we've reached a point, whether we like it or not, that we must exit subsidy. And Dangote refinery coming at this time gives us the confidence that even if we exit subsidy, that the fuel will be available, and eventually the interplay of market will obviously moderate the prices to a level that will help the country. So we are expecting that, no doubt, by the time he produces for domestic consumption, the excess will be exported by the numbers that he has talked about and which we agree with. We should see close almost about between consumption to about $5 to $10 billion in effect that will come to the country. Whether it comes to our reserve is not the point. It is the fact that the dollar is available that will be sold into the market, so that customers of banks who need to import do not necessarily have to be resorting to CBN for dollar. They can go to their banks, and Dangote will sell their banks those dollars. And we are going to ensure that it's done at good market rates, because and what I didn't see that I would have loved to see on Monday was that the central bank, the government, the country has helped Dangote to set up that refinery. He's a Nigerian. Nigerians must benefit from that venture. And we are going to continue to be engaging him and talking to him to ensure, and I'm sure that being the richest man in Africa, I'm sure he's going to throw a few crumbs so that the price will be lower than you would expect normally. Somebody asked a question about SabiMoney. Well, SabiMoney Financial Literacy Program is a program that we decided to put in place. It's an online learning portal on CBN website where we have people who call trainers who will go and train the trainees or train people. They go through the training about financial literacy understanding various banking products, and then they can now take those and go into the nooks and crannies in Nigeria and then enlighten people, teach people who ordinarily do not even get involved in financial services. And hopefully with that they can come into the banking system and financial system, and so by that improve the level of our financial inclusion. So you ask, will you be able to achieve 95? We will try. I am not going to make you a commitment, but we keep putting various policies in place that will help drive financial inclusion to a desired level where we can say that we have reasonably done a good job. Lastly, you're trying to say that we talked about the RT200, I just heard Naira for dollar is and how much compliment are we getting from the oil revenue inflows side, given that it still remains the sector with the highest immediate potential for foreign exchange? You are right. It's a sector that has the highest potential for inflows, FX inflows into the country, particularly at a time like this when the Global Financial Foundation is very tight. You're very right. And that's why we're also saying that we are trying as much as possible to diversify or rely less on proceeds from crude. And that's why we're putting the RT200, Naira for dollar, and the rest of them. What we're saying is that they are still important, but we're not going to hide the fact that, unfortunately, that sector has not contributed much into the creation to reserve in the last almost more than 2 years. Some of those data we'll be talking about later. And we all know that sometime last year, about this time last year, our production was less than 1 million barrels per day. And it is shocking that even the newspaper published that last week or sometime recently, that production is still at 1.1 million barrels per day. That is a dangerously low level of production and export for Nigeria. Given that what we expect, what OPEC quota there gives us is 1.8 million barrels per day. If we're having those kind of shortfalls, we know that NNPC is facing its own various challenges, but I think it's time for all of us to fold our sleeves and get on board with NNPC to say, what is causing this? We need to be able to ramp up production effectively to 1.8 minimum. Plus condensate, maybe to about 2 or 2.3 million barrels per day. If we do not do this, I think that we are really looking at a real problem ahead of us. Particularly at a time when there is a concerted determination to exit the subsidy regime. There is danger ahead. We must do something immediately. Thank you very much.